The glow of my laptop cast long shadows across my home office, the quiet hum of the machine my only company this late evening. As the IT manager at a bustling marketing firm, bringing work home was more of a necessity than a choice. But tonight, my work followed me in a way I never expected. I was finalizing the quarterly cybersecurity report, a task that required meticulous cross-checking with the team's schedules and data access logs. My wife, Jenna, also worked at the firm, under my supervision in the digital content department. Our professional lives were intertwined, a situation that demanded careful navigation given our personal ties. Typing her credentials, I accessed Jenna's user log to verify her project timelines against the security protocols. She'd been acting distant lately, her smiles more perfunctory, her conversations clipped. Perhaps, I thought, work might be stressing her more than usual. As her user activity loaded, an open application on her dashboard caught my eye, an active chat room labeled simply, Project X. Puzzled, since no current project bore that name, I clicked on it, attributing my intrusion to routine security checks. The chat was not what I expected. Instead of discussions on marketing strategies or client feedback, the screen displayed an array of messages exchanged with someone listed as M_Gray. The last message sent read, "Final schedule confirmed. Check the attachment and delete after confirming." Driven by a burgeoning dread, I opened the attachment. It wasn't a project schedule. It was a photograph, Jenna, unmistakably, less clothed than any decent work-related file would ever require. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat echoing the shattering of my trust. A cascade of messages followed in my absent scroll, detailing times and places, none related to work but rather to clandestine meetings, to moments stolen from what I believed was our shared life. "Jenna," I whispered to the empty room, my voice breaking the silence like fragile glass underfoot. The betrayal was stark, laid bare in pixels and timestamps. But why? And with whom? M_Gray, this name meant nothing to me. My thoughts spiraled, each more agonizing than the last. Revenge, a dark whisper suggested. A plan began to form, born not just from pain, but from the ashes of my dismantled reality. If my life was to become a battleground, then so be it. I would not be the only casualty in this unexpected war. Hours later, Jenna walked into the office, her steps hesitant. "Hey," she called out softly, probably noticing the tension stiffening my shoulders. "Working late again?" Turning to face her, I managed a tight-lipped smile. "Just wrapping up some loose ends." The irony of my words hung heavy between us. "Anything I can help with?" she asked, inching closer. I studied her, the familiarity of her features now foreign. "Actually, yes." I paused, letting the silence build. "Why don't you tell me about Project X?" Her face paled, a silent confirmation of my fears. What do you mean?" "You know what I mean, Jenna. The chat room, M_Gray, the photos." My voice was steady, belying the chaos inside. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. "It's not what you think," she finally whispered. "It never is," I replied, coldness seeping into my bones. "But we'll have time to discuss it. For now, I think I'll take a long, hard look at everything you've been working on." "Everything?" As she stood there, a mix of fear and regret painting her expression, I turned back to my computer, my actions deliberate. This was just the beginning. Revenge had a way of making its own rules, and I was ready to enforce them. Every keystroke was a declaration. Jenna's personal hell had just begun, and our paths, once so entwined, were about to diverge forever. The morning light did little to brighten the mood in the office. Jenna arrived early, her usual radiance dimmed by the weight of our last conversation. As she approached, I could tell she'd spent a sleepless night formulating explanations. "Can we talk?" Jenna's voice trembled slightly, betraying her calm exterior. I nodded, leading her to the small conference room that promised a veneer of privacy. "Let's talk then," I said, closing the door behind us with a soft click that seemed to echo too loudly. Jenna sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mark, I made a mistake, she began, her eyes not meeting mine. Mistake, I echoed, the word tasting bitter. Is that what we're calling it now? It was nothing more than a fling. It didn't mean anything, she rushed the words, as if speed could lessen their impact. And that's supposed to make it better? Supposed to make it better? Despite my attempt to control it. How long, Jenna? Her answer was barely audible. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies. The revelation stung, and I fought to keep my composure. Who is he? M_Gray? She hesitated, then, Michael Grayson. From logistics. I knew him, a nondescript man whose path rarely crossed mine. Now, his name was etched into the most painful part of my memory. I see. What are you going to do? Jenna's voice was fraught with fear. I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just my wife, but the architect of my betrayal. What am I going to do? I repeated, standing to pace the small room. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the kind of person they're dealing with, both of you. No, please, she pleaded, reaching out as if to stop me physically. Don't do this. We can get past. Get past this? I cut her off, anger flaring. I don't think we can. Leaving the room, I headed straight to my office, my mind racing with plans. The first was simple, access Michael Grayson's employment file. As head of IT, I had every right to review any employee's digital behavior if suspected of misconduct. And this, I rationalized, was misconduct at its most personal. Minutes later, I was sifting through his emails, chats, and document logs. It didn't take long to find more than I bargained for. Not only had Grayson been careless in his personal indiscretions, but his professional lines were also blurred. I found discrepancies in his project reports, signs of embezzlement. Armed with this information, I printed out everything. Evidence of professional misconduct would be harder to dismiss or forgive than personal failings in the court of public opinion at our firm. By noon, I had reported Grayson to Human Resources, attaching the incriminating documents. I think you'll find this interesting, I said to the HR manager, my voice cool and detached. What about Jenna? The HR manager asked, a hint of caution in her voice. I paused, the image of Jenna pleading with me earlier flashing in my mind. I'll handle that personally, I answered, my decision firm. As the day descended into evening, I knew my actions had set in motion events that could not be undone. Jenna's and Michael's careers at the firm were as good as over. The satisfaction was hollow, though, as the personal cost of such revenge began to dawn on me. Sitting alone in my darkened office, I pondered the ruins of my marriage. Was this victory? Or was it just the beginning of a longer, more painful battle? Revenge had been exacted, but at what cost? The answer lay somewhere in the gathering shadows of the coming days. The consequences of my revelations had been immediate and merciless. Michael Grayson was suspended pending a full investigation, his career hanging by a thread as whispers of his financial misconduct mingled with murmurings of his personal indiscretions. The office was abuzz, the atmosphere charged with tension and speculation. Jenna, on the other hand, faced a different kind of isolation. As word spread, her allies dwindled, leaving her to navigate a workspace that had turned openly hostile. Today, I watched from a distance as she walked through the office, her head held high despite the scornful looks thrown her way. She caught me observing and made her way over, her stride determined. Mark, we need to talk. Now. I nodded, leading her to an empty meeting room once more, the scene eerily reminiscent of our confrontation just days ago. Is this what you wanted? Jenna's voice was hard, her usual warmth absent. To see me suffer like this? I leaned against the table, my arms folded. It's not about what I want anymore, Jenna. Actions have consequences. You've ruined Michael's life over a fling. And mine too, she accused. He ruined his own life, I countered sharply. And you weren't exactly an innocent bystander in all this, were you? Jenna's face softened, pain flickering across her features. I know I made a mistake, Mark. I'm sorry, more than you can know. But isn't this enough? What more do you want? The raw hurt in her voice tugged at me, but the betrayal was still too fresh, the wound too deep. I want to understand why, Jenna. Why him? Why lie to me every day? She sighed, looking away. I don't know, Mark. I felt overlooked, I guess. We worked together, lived together, but somewhere along the way, we stopped being us. Michael was a mistake, a terrible one, but he listened when I felt invisible to you. Her confession stung, the truth in her words more painful than the betrayal itself. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Where do we go from here, Jenna? I asked finally, the fight draining out of me. Finally, the fight draining admitted. Maybe it's too late for us. Maybe it isn't. But I'm going to resign. It's clear I can't stay here. The finality of her statement hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. And us? I ventured, my voice barely above a whisper. That's up to you, Jenna replied, her eyes meeting mine for the first time since the conversation began. I'll give you space to decide. I'll move out this weekend. As she left the room, her departure felt like a physical weight lifting, yet the emotional burden deepened. Alone, I considered the ruins of our relationship, wondering if the price of my retribution had been too high. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I can't stay here. Calls from upper management, inquiries from HR, and sidelong glances from colleagues filled my hours. The office, once a place of shared purpose, now felt like a battlefield strewn with personal losses. That evening, as I sat in my now too quiet home office, I reflected on all that had transpired. The retribution I had sought was complete, yet the victory was hollow, tainted by the cost to Jenna's spirit and the fracture of what we once had. Was it justice or just vengeance? The line had blurred, and I found myself on uncertain ground, wrestling with the aftermath of my own decisions. As the night deepened, the questions loomed larger, the answers more elusive. The road ahead was unclear, and for the first time, I questioned if the path of retribution I had chosen was the right one at all. The office had never felt more like a war zone. With Jenna's resignation processed and her departure imminent, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Meanwhile, Michael Grayson's investigation had unearthed more than just financial discrepancies. It exposed a network of corruption that extended beyond him, implicating several unexpected allies in his schemes. It was the last day Jenna would be at the office, and the weight of our impending finality was palpable. As I prepared to leave for the day, a last-minute email caught my attention. It was from an anonymous source, but the subject line chilled me to the bone: the truth about Project X. Curious and apprehensive, I opened the attachment. It wasn't just evidence of Jenna's infidelity or Michael's corruption, it was a meticulously detailed report linking several top executives to the scandal, including evidence of my own overlooked discrepancies, financial moves cleverly disguised, but now glaringly apparent. The report was not only thorough but damning. Stunned, I realized this was no simple affair or financial misconduct, it was a coup within the company, masked under personal failings. Jenna and Michael were merely pawns in a larger game. I stormed out of my office, heading straight for the boardroom where I knew I'd find the executives in their late afternoon meeting. Bursting through the doors, I threw the printed emails and reports on the conference table. Care to explain this? I demanded, my voice booming in the otherwise silent room. The executives exchanged uneasy glances, their composure crumbling. Amidst the chaos, Jenna walked in, her eyes wide in shock as she took in the scene. "What's going on, Mark?" she asked, her voice steady despite the clear confusion. I faced her, the pieces of the puzzle snapping into place with painful clarity. "It seems we've all been played," I said, my tone cold. This wasn't just about an affair or embezzlement. It was about taking control of the company, using personal scandals to cover up the real plot. The room erupted into accusations and denials as Jenna absorbed the information. Turning to the implicated executives, she shook her head in disbelief. "You used us," she whispered, betrayal etched into every feature. One of the executives stood, attempting to smooth over the situation. It's business, nothing personal. We needed a diversion, and your affair provided the perfect cover. Fury unlike anything I had felt before took hold. And you, I turned to Jenna, you were a part of this, even if unknowingly. Jenna's expression hardened. I was used, just like you. But unlike you, I didn't let my anger cloud my judgment. With that, she turned to leave, her steps resolute. The betrayal, the real deception, lay not in our personal failings, but in the shadowy corners of corporate greed. In that moment, I knew there could be no reconciliation, no forgiveness. Jenna and I were victims and perpetrators in a game neither of us fully understood until it was too late. As the boardroom descended into chaos, security arriving to handle the disgraced executives, I realized my revenge had only just begun. With ruthless precision, I leveraged the uncovered evidence not just to bring down those involved, but to rebuild the company in a vision that ensured such betrayals would never occur again. In the aftermath, Jenna and I parted ways, our mutual understanding of betrayal too deep to bridge. The company survived, stronger and more transparent, but the personal costs were irreparable. Jenna disappeared from my life, a ghost of love lost to the insidious games of corporate intrigue. Months later, as I sat in my redesigned office, the city lights sprawling before me, I reflected on the price of truth and revenge. It was a violent, painful path, but one that led to a surprising rebirth. Yet, the cost was etched forever in the shadows of what had been, a reminder that in the pursuit of vengeance, sometimes the deepest cuts are self-inflicted.